Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Encounters with God. I have my friend and a pastor here in East Texas, Dr. Glen Young. Dr. Glen has served at First Baptist Church in Kilgore for 11 years. He has 3 children, 4 grandchildren. He's served as a senior pastor at several churches in Texas and Louisiana. He's involved in ministry work. In fact, these churches, when he is being called to interview and so forth to be a potential pastor at these churches, he lets them know that I'm a missionary pastor. You know, God has a kind of a dual call on his life, and you'll learn some interesting things that he is doing to minister and share the gospel in some very creative ways and very healthy ways throughout the world. He's also involved in something that's called the American Exchange Project that we'll find a little bit more about later on, and got several websites that we'll post these websites in the show notes where you can go for further information, or if you want to contact Dr. Glen on any of that. So besides all that, he's just a great guy. I heard him speak at the East Texas Christian Fellowship. And it was I was just so impressed with Glen. It wasn't like I thought, okay, you know, I'm going to sit here and hear maybe a typical Baptist preacher that's going to give this message, and nothing wrong with Baptist preachers, but I was just so blown away by, as he began to share the story of his life and how God, not man, but how God has directed his steps. You know, the Bible says the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord, and how the Lord would direct him and send him in certain places where I thought, you know, where is this going? You know, it doesn't look like God's really leading here, but it would just open up, and things began to happen. So it was very encouraging testimony. So I definitely, after hearing that, I was so moved. I wanted to have Glen on. So thank you for your time, Glen. I appreciate you as a friend, a pastor,
yeah,
a
I was going to
mentor,
say thank you so much. I was telling your wife earlier, just before we started this, I can't out-gracious you. You're always gracious and just a good friend, Ken, and I appreciate it. And your ministry here in this area is huge. And so anyway, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. And you're looking at this right here. I'll get this to you right here. This is some dirty, filthy water, and we wanted to have this kind of running while we're speaking, doing a demonstration here. But this is one of the things that he does, this filter here, and maybe just share a little about this filter here.
Sure.
And the process that's going on here, Glen, get into the, they'll know what's happening.
This is not unique to us. A lot of folks do this. Sawyer Corporation, and this came from kidney dialysis, some technology that was used for kidney dialysis, and someone made the brilliant jump to clean water is the issue all over the world, and this is simple. There are no mechanical parts, there's no chemicals for someone to get wrong, and it's inexpensive. So we were looking for some solutions to some of our folks who had some real water issues in Central America, and this was pointed out to us. So this is a 0.1 micron water filter. We've put out thousands of these in communities where clean water is not accessible. And what we did today is I took some dirt out of your backyard and poured in there, and I'll drink that water now, but I'll drink that water in Central America coming out of this. It's a technology that American sportsmen will use, but they've set this up specifically for developing parts of the world. And several years in, we have moms just saying, this is the most important possession I have. My kids don't get sick anymore, and I have access to clean water. So it's part of their daily routine is they will take 5 gallons of water from their water source, they'll filter it, and then that's their potable water for the day. So.
And you're using this you're giving these filters, which I think they're only like $30 a piece.
Correct.
You know, I've donated money before to drill water wells and that, where it may be, you know, thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, but for something like this, it's $30. I was so blown away by the price and the fact that it puts the power into the hands of the individual people, and the way you're distributing them is you're giving them to pastors, correct?
Correct. So we will, someone in that village needs to know how to troubleshoot, how to take care of it. Well, we make the local pastor the expert. And so he's in those homes constantly. Again, the price point, what's great about it, I've got 5th grade boys who say, hey, I can give a family clean water for life. I can mow 2 lawns and get $30 and do that.
Yeah.
And so I have guys, well, we do it in other parts of the world, but mainly Honduras. And we train the pastor in how to do that. And then he is constantly in those homes. One pastor in a little village, he had a little struggling church with about 12 people. There were 100 families in the village. We gave him 100 filters. I went back a year later, and he had 70 of those 100 families in his church because he had been in their home. And so we give, in John chapter 4, when Jesus is with the Samaritan woman at the well, he says, you drink this water, you'll thirst again, but I'll give you living water. We always share that verse with them, and those pastors do the same. And you can see, you just have to trust me that this is a bucket full of dirty water out of your backyard, and that's drinkable, and then that's easily maintained. They do that on a daily basis.
Yeah. And it's so life-changing. It's like, I've heard it said that like some of the water wells, and that's great. Some places don't have access to as much water as other people do in just different regions of the world, but you can have kind of like the water Nazi. So if I'm kind of in control of this water well here, well, you may have to do me a favor before, I'm going to allow you to get some clean water. I may want you to work in my fields or bring me a meal or whatever. But something like this, as Glen has shared, is it puts the power in the people's hands, and it is such a prized possession. We don't think anything about clean water. I'm sitting here, got a bottle of water, poured it in here, got some ice. It's nothing to us, but as the pastor shared, about Jesus, the water of life, when you can connect the two, meeting their medical, physical needs like that, keeping them from getting sick, from drinking filthy water, and talk about the water of life, Jesus, that's just powerful.
And we've had, we don't even think about the implications. I've had several moms, and by the way, the moms with small children are our biggest fans in these villages. And one of the moms told us, well, my kid no longer gets dysentery, so my kid is at school every day, so he's getting an education. It's just it's something we take for granted here, but a huge issue for much of the world. And we share it with the gospel, and for $30, if a component breaks, I'll get you another filter, as opposed to $15,000, $20,000 wells and projects like that. So that's one of the ways we've done that. I'm going to close this off so we don't overfill.
And what is the name of this organization or this?
So we're distributing this through Vital Global Ministries. It's a nonprofit, and like I said, by the time we buy the buckets in country because that's expensive to ship buckets around the world, but we can buy them in country, and then by the time you get the shipping and all of that, it's about $30 a unit. But if I'm traveling down there, one unit comes in a bag. I can put 75 in a suitcase and carry them in my airplane, and we do not my airplane, but in the airplane as we go.
Sure.
We're sending them into Africa, and we're sending them into several places in Central America. When the Russian-Ukrainian war started, a friend of mine called and said, hey, as refugees are coming out, the Russians are purposefully destroying the infrastructure in these cities. Can you send some filters in? And the company was very generous, Sawyer, and I had some not Christian but humanitarian friends that said, hey, we'll help. And in the first weeks of that, we were able to put 10,000 of these into those cities for the civilians, for their infrastructure, and so they could have clean water. So, so our focus is mainly in Honduras where we're working, but they go all around the world.
Yeah,
So.
the application just,
Yes.
yeah, wartime.
And we're not the only people. There are any number of ministries using this. Sawyer has been excellent in making this available to folks at just the absolute right price point to be able to do that. So.
You can't beat that $30 for clean water, change a person's life, change a family's life, a village life,
Absolutely.
a war-torn zone life, the people there. So, yeah, that's awesome. Well, getting to you, Glen, getting to my friend Glen, you had it's interesting, your life's been very interesting. You felt you had very godly parents, if I recall. Your mom was a praying mother. You'd wake up in the morning, she would be at the kitchen table reading the Bible.
Yeah, so mom and dad both. And mom was a stay-at-home mom. Dad was engineer with oil company. And every morning when I woke up, Mom had already been up a couple of hours, and just every morning I saw her at that kitchen table, not just with the Bible open, but with commentaries open and making notes and studying. And then every night, I'll tell you 2 stories about my dad. As I'm walking past his bedroom to mine to go to bed, I don't remember a night where I didn't see him kneeling in prayer at the foot of his bed. But the thing my brother reminded me of this. Dad's Bible always smelled like drilling fluid and the drilling floor of a drilling rig, which is sort of this chemical smell and dirty and stale cigarette smoke. It smelled that way because that Bible was on that rig floor with him, and he was well respected in the industry, but well respected as a godly Christian man. And I heard that years after his passing and after he had retired, people in what is a pretty tough industry, sharing with me what an impact he had made on their lives with his faith.
Yeah, you had a little stint later on in the oil field as well.
Yes,
We'll get to that later, but so you kind of felt kind of like Samuel. Samuel had the call of God on his life earlier, so through your mom and dad's influence, you felt like, something was stirring in your heart? Or
I'll say this as a pastor, when parents bring a 7-year-old to me and say, hey, this child's ready to be saved, I'm always hesitant to be how much does that child understand at the time? But at 7, I understood, and I was baptized, and it was real. For me, it was never in the home I grew up with, it was, I guess I'd say it was a question of when, not if. I mean, I early on felt the call of God. So I was saved at an early age, spent a lot of years just loving reading my Bible. My brother used to laugh when I was 6th or 7th grade. He said, "You're the only 7th grader I know with a Cruden's Concordance that you're going through," or but I think what that did at an early age, a lot of folks in my church, you're going to do quote unquote big things for the kingdom, and we think that means a big church, and that means this big ministry, and quite honestly, God's always led in a different direction, and some of the places in the world we're in, that would be a detriment, not an advantage. And so God has just been faithful. As I am faithful, He is certainly faithful. The question is not whether He'll be faithful, but whether I'll be faithful to the next step. So,
yeah. I found that part of your testimony interesting. I know as we grow in grace and faith, God does sometimes promote us to a bigger church or a bigger ministry to care for more people. But I think you made the remark, and 67 years, I think, how many pastors has ever left a big church to go to a small church?
Yeah,
it's always we're climbing the corporate ladder kind of in business, and in church, it seems like.
Yeah, and nothing's wrong with if that's
Yeah.
the church God's called you to, then be the best pastor that church calls you to. But I realized early on when I was in ministry and I had folks sort of setting me up to go up that corporate ladder, and I just realized, wait a minute, that's not the Holy Spirit. That's man saying this is the path you should take. And God's always led me down other paths, but they have always been, I've seen his hand at work in all of that. So,
When you were in college, I believe you had someone that was kind of trying to mentor you or take you under his wing, so to speak, maybe, and he was big on the speaker circuit, and he was like, Glenn, come with me, and
yeah, and he was
let's jump on a plane, we're going to go speak, and
he was, and that's 25, 30 years ago. No one would know him now, but at the time was known and was a great mentor to me. And one of the things that he did that no one saw, but I thought was just, again, what a good godly man would do. I'm in college and he's speaking in Minnesota or Alabama or somewhere, and he's got someone's flying him there for that engagement. Well, he has an extra seat, and he'd say, "Hey, Glenn, come and fly with me." Of course, he's busy during the day, but he has that flight time to mentor me. And then, of course, he built me up. And, of course, again, but then the picture is, oh, well, you're going to be that guy doing those things. That was never what God had for me, and it became clear that it wasn't, but he works in other ways. So.
Yeah, whereas I think a lot of people would probably jump on that and think, this is such an opportunity that, this has got to be the hand of God. I'm expanding my ministry, I'm growing, I've got a mentor, but in your heart, hey, this is...
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like David trying to wear Saul's armor.
I think that's a perfect illustration of it. Yeah, that's not what he prepared for me. And when you're walking with God, it's not as simple as am I happy or not, but there's a joy when you're walking in his footsteps. And even to the outside world, when something looks wonderful, if it's not in his footsteps and not in his direction, there's going to be a discontent in your heart. And so, and I thought, honestly, walking away from sort of that speaking deal, I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be a missionary. Well, that means I must be going to Africa, right? And really started working to that end, but God shut that door as well. He kind of shocked me when and I had done all the preparation and had started that process, and I'm preparing to go to Africa. My wife laughs because we were friends in college, but I never would date her in college because I was going to Africa, and I didn't want to bring a wife to Africa. And so she just laughed and said, well, God knew what he was doing, and of course he did. But you could have knocked me over with a feather when God said, no, I want you to pastor a church in the States. And I was like, well, pastors are a dime a dozen in the States. There's plenty of us here, But he has always placed me in churches that had a mission heart and allowed me to do mission work as a pastor, and that's sort of been my path through all of this.
Yeah. You even tried to gig as a youth minister for a while too.
I did. I was youth minister for several years, and I realized that one, I was relating less and less to them, but one summer in particular, again, I thought, well, get on the youth speaker circuit, and I did that for one summer and was miserable, and I knew that was not my calling. That was not what I wanted to do. And it's about that time that I began to realize that God had placed Danielle in my life, that she would be my wife, and I also began to realize that the call was missions, and God worked in that in so many ways, but really worked in, as I thought, okay, there's my North Star, that's what I'm going to do. But then he worked to move us into a pastorate and made clear that that was his call in our life. And I didn't want to go back to school, but he made clear that I was to go back to school. And
I thought those circumstances with school, that story kind of hit me.
Sure.
You were kind of set up, and so your wife, I think, was a school teacher?
Yeah, she was a school teacher, and to go to the seminary that I felt led to go to, we were going to have to leave the ministry I was at. We were in around San Antonio, in Texas. We needed to be closer into New Orleans, and God said, you need to resign this position. I'm preparing you for something else. And of course, it was going well, and the church, my pastor said, well, why?
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer other than, well, God said, and I felt really, I mean, I know we always blame God for everything, but I felt really bad about that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I would too. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Exactly.
You've got a good gig here, friend. You're blowing this. I don't know if this is God or not.
Absolutely.
You know, and get a hold of yourself, young man.
And so here's what happened. A Sunday night, and it was the most awkward thing, I told the church, okay, after the summer, I'm resigning to go back to school. And of course, the question, well, where are you? And I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
Monday morning, a church called me and said, hey, were you interested in being our pastor? Of course, this was in another state, another town, close into the seminary. And I said, well, maybe, and let's pray about that. A couple of days later, my wife, who was a school teacher, the principal of another church who had a private school, called and said, hey, I want you to teach our 8th grade next year. She said, well, I live in Texas and you're out of state. He said, no, the position's yours. Well, those two churches were in the same town. They were in close proximity to the seminary. And so she begins the school year. That was God's path, and we both took those positions. She began to teach at the beginning of the school year. I had several months before I had another semester before I got into the seminary program, and a couple of months before I got into the church that I'd be pastoring. So I had time on my hands. I had a friend who ran an all-field temp service, and I said, hey, I don't want to take a job that I'm going to leave in 2 months, but I would like to be doing something. So he hired me and put me to work. And so if you don't know all-field temp services, it is hard manual labor.
Sure.
Most of the guys, quite honestly, often are ex-convicts, and that's the job they can get. And so I started working, and it's August in South Louisiana, and I'm swinging an 8-pound sledgehammer in the middle of this pipe yard with all these convicts, and that was my job. And the first day that felt heroic, and the second day that felt awful, and the third day I said, God, I've got a master's degree from seminary. What am I doing here? You know? And he doesn't answer immediately.
Yeah.
But about 2 weeks in, the guy I'm working with, just in the middle of the day, looks at me and says, so what do you do? I said, I swing a sledgehammer. What do you do? I'm an oil field hand. And he kind of laughed. He said, that's not what you do. What do you do?
Yeah.
I thought I was doing pretty good with the sledgehammer. Apparently not, right? So
they picked you out, huh?
Yeah. I said, well, I'm a pastor. But my church, the position doesn't open up for another month or so, so I'm here with you. And this gritty, oil-field, ex-convict guy just drops his hammer. He said, you know I've been to prison. I said, yeah, I know that. He said, you know I was saved in prison. I said, I didn't know that. He said, I've been praying for a pastor, but I just was uncomfortable walking into any church.
Yeah, wow.
And so I realized, and he realized, hey, for the next couple of months, I'm your pastor. And so I early on began to realize God calls you to certain people at a certain time. Just be open to hear that. I think what I told you guys is it's when you walk into a party, if there's a table, whoever's sitting there, if God gives you a seat at that table, sit down and make sure God occupies that seat. I mean, and so that was one of those instances, I think, is the way I described that to you guys.
I think it's so, to me, it just goes back. I think of, Abraham, the call of Abraham. He went out not knowing where he was going. And so many times, we want to have the blueprint. I want to know I'm here, I've got this all charted out, God. But here you have a man pastoring a church, resigns. The people are going, really? Okay. What church are you going to pastor? He doesn't have a church. He can't say, I'm going to First Church or Second Church or whatever. Both of them just up and do. But yet, when they take that step of faith, God, within days, within a week, God provided a church to call him. God provided a teaching opportunity. And so that's just the beautiful part to me. Instead of being, having to have everything reasoned out and that like that, charting your whole life, sometimes God will just move us by his Spirit. We were talking earlier off camera about been reading the book of Acts again toward the last part of this year here, and it's just so interesting, the Spirit of God would tell Philip, go up there and stand by that chariot. That man's reading a book. And he'll listen, and he says, I don't understand what I'm reading. I do. Well, stop the chariot, jump in,
Yeah, and I think sometimes we blame God for all kind of decisions, but we don't really listen to him to just, this isn't being irresponsible, but it is following him. We were laughing earlier, but when I gave that talk with the Ministerial Alliance, my wife asked me, well, what'd you talk about? And I told her, and she said, oh, you told him this story, didn't you? And I didn't. So when I'm in seminary, right, in New Orleans, it's the same situation, not to go deep into all of that, but I'm working late at the library studying. It's midnight. They shut the library down. I'm heading back to my room, and I get a craving for nachos. And New Orleans has great food, but not Tex-Mex food. And where do you get nachos in New Orleans at midnight?
Midnight, yeah. Something's off.
And it wasn't, oh, God said to go get nachos. I was hungry for nachos. So I jump in my car and I drive to Chili's, or I think it was a Chili's, and they're about to shut down. They said, well, we have a seat in the bar. You can sit in there. And so I go sit down in the bar and order my nachos, and the waiter asked me the obvious question, what are you doing at midnight in New Orleans eating nachos in the bar?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, well, I'm working on my doctorate at the seminary, and I was just hungry. And the waiter sat down at the table. He said, you're at the seminary? I said, yes. He said, where are you from? I said, I had been in Texas. I'm here. He said, oh. He said, I came to New Orleans running from Texas. He said, my dad was in seminary. I said, who's your dad? He told me. I knew his dad. Mm-hmm. He said, wow. I've been praying for God to send me somebody. And we had this great conversation and reconnected him with his dad and all of that. And so the point is, can God give you a craving for nachos at midnight? Absolutely. I mean, you just need to, listen to what God is leading you in. What are the odds of a pastor from Texas meets the son of a pastor from Texas who is running from God in a Chili's in New Orleans at midnight? And I knew the family and knew the young man then. And God, I can't put that together. God puts that together.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I call it just a God moment or a God encounter. You some things you can kind of coordinate and maybe manipulate and make things happen, but that's just too much. That's just the hand of God and how God works through situations like that. That's a beautiful story. So you kind of became, as you had this interim time there for a couple of months, I think. So you became the oil field minister to.
So yeah, I got to.
I mean, someone has to be there, and that's just so beautiful that he gets saved in prison. He's getting a second chance at a job, and you show up.
Well, and that's
an unlikely match.
That's one of the that's a unique industry, and it's sort of insular to itself. But because my dad and brothers and family had been in that industry for years, I wasn't, but I was able to minister to him and to other guys in that ministry. And God just, again, puts us at these unique tables at unique times. and that's not unique to me. He does it for all of us. So
Yes.
what is the table he set you at? And then be his presence invited to that table is the key. So.
And then you you have these odd groups that you have, these characters in your life.
Sure.
You have a yeah. You have another group. Now I don't even know how to explain this. They're like all over the world.
Sure,
They're
sure.
Like what, London, is it?
Yes.
Boston, or and y'all
So I
tell
think,
us about this.
Sure. I mean,
strange
look,
group, and you're the odd guy out, but you're right in the mix.
I'm a very conservative evangelical Christian, and God arranged for this group of very secular, academic. I'm nothing like them. But all of them began to recognize the divide in our nation between sort of heartland America and these coastal, and not just in America, but London, LA, New York, Boston. So a very nice lady, she's become a very good friend of mine. I don't think she might. Orly Hochschild is nothing like me. She was a Berkeley sociologist. She is very liberal. I'm very conservative. Had no, but she had the curiosity to say, I don't understand the middle of America. And she's written a couple of books on middle of America. She happened to do her first book on Lake Charles, Louisiana. I knew some of those folks. I sent her a note and said, and I didn't know her at the time. I just sent her a note blindly and said, you don't know me. I disagree with some of what you said, but you treated the people that I love and care about with respect. I really appreciate that. That started an online conversation, she and I, and we became very good friends. A few years later, she said, well, let me introduce you to this person. And some of these names are folks you would be familiar with. They're known in sort of academic and media and government circles or whatever. And all of these guys said, we're trying to figure, okay, an evangelical pastor in Texas, conservative, we don't know what you guys are thinking. And so this has built a great friendship. And so it is a daily now conversation with these guys that are going to have a very different view of the world than me. And they don't come to me saying, oh, hey, what does the Bible say about this? But they know that my faith is the core of who I am. And so it's my new mission field is this group sort of secular, liberal, not like anything like the community. So I am doing foreign missions, just not as I imagined I would, right? And it's, again, it's not, I wouldn't be offensive to them and try and say, I'm always straightforward and try and say, oh, well, I'm trying to make you like me. They know that I want them to be a Christian. But there's some genuine friendships where they know I have a different view, they know I have a different understanding, and they know that I'm going to bring the Bible and my relationship to God into that understanding, and it has allowed me to speak into a world. There's not a big evangelical witness at the Harvard and Yales and those parts of the world. So that's my mission field. Didn't go there. That's not why. But God has placed me in this group of folks, and it's been a great opportunity to share my faith in my life with some folks that I really care about. They're not a project; they're friends.
Right. So. Yeah, it turns out that way. And you also, before really the internet became the internet, the big deal, you had you were kind of an internet pastor when that wasn't even a cool thing to do. You had a
and I don't do any of this anymore. Yes, I was. In fact, you have, and rightfully so, have been prodding me to get back into some of these things.
I have.
When
I'm
Facebook,
encouraging you right now.
Yes, when Facebook first came out, I don't like technology and all of that, but I decided, let's see what this is.
Yeah.
And before influencer was a thing, I wasn't huge, but looked up one day and I had several thousand people on my Facebook page from all over the world, and none of them liked me at all. And again, different lifestyles, different things, and they had been told that evangelical Christians hated them.
Sure.
And so we could discuss and disagree, but do it and I realized pretty quickly that I'm pastoring some of these people online, and some come to faith and some don't. But the key is that you don't make it an evangelical project. These are people you care about and love, and if they know you care about them, they will allow you to speak into their life.
Yeah.
And so, a couple of years ago, I got off of all social media, but again, maybe I'll get back on there. I'm no influencer, certainly not. But so that before influencer was a thing, I guess that was
you were an influencer.
I don't
before it
know
was a
about that,
thing.
but that was.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, then, I mean, if you had thousands of followers, that was a big deal.
Sure.
That was, now people have millions, but that was kind of the genesis, the beginning of it all, and that was a big
And that
push.
was one of those occasions where, and whether I get back into that or not, at about the time that was blowing up, I very clearly felt from God, it's time to step back from that. I mean, again, I don't want to blame God for those decisions,
Right.
But you just, and he had some other things.
A time and a season.
Exactly. And so,
So it's
in
a
the
season to come
worldly
back,
view,
season
it's,
to come back into it.
yeah, maybe
No,
so, maybe so. In the worldly view, you say, well, if I'd stayed in, I'd have X number of, well, that's, that's not mine to know.
Wasn't God's plan.
I just trust that God's put me at the right table at the right time for what he would have me to do. So.
Another interesting part of your life, which is many, is you were a pastor to a bunch of NASA
Yes.
space engineers, astronauts, and so forth. So you're shifting around here. So tell us about your
So many
minister,
Sure.
how that started, how you got into.
Church called me. I served a church in Clear Lake, which is the portion of Houston surrounding NASA.
Very familiar with that area.
About 80% of our church worked for NASA.
Yeah.
It was always a running joke that, at NASA everything is triple redundancy. No NASA engineer walks by faith ever, but I was pastoring them in that.
Yeah.
And what I discovered was there's a vibrant faith community in the scientific world, just not in the academic world. All of these guys had to give a specific answer to get their college degrees.
Sure.
But there was a vibrant Christian community within NASA and within that scientific world. And they love the Lord. So I had the great privilege of pastoring some of those guys, and just fascinating conversations with the astronauts and the engineers about where they saw God, how they saw God, how they worshiped Him. So I served there for a time, and God called me from there to Kilgore, Texas, a small town. And people said, well, why are you going from Houston to... I said, well, have you ever commuted in Houston? But that's not the reason, right? It was, you've heard me say I've got the privilege of pastoring Mayberry, and that's, Kilgore is a small town. I love pastoring that town. It has an oil field background. I have an oil field background. It's a good fit. But again, there was a season for the NASA deal, and there was a season for the small town, and God just blesses in that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And your ministry in Kilgore, so you've been here 11 years now, and what do you see transpiring in Kilgore? How is it different from NASA, or how is it different than Louisiana?
Sure. Well,
how are you adapted there?
The challenge in NASA was it was very much like pastoring near a military base. Guys are there for 1 to 2 years, and then they're moving to the next thing. Whereas in a town like Kilgore, you have 4 generations pastoring
yes.
that you're pastoring in a church, and also there's some anonymity in the city and in a small town. Everyone knows the pastor, and so you get the opportunity to pastor the town. And there are challenges to that as well, but there, again, if God has called you to a place, figure out what's the ministry of that place. After pastoring in Houston, I remember the first Sunday in Kilgore, Texas. My kids had grown up in this church in Houston. We had, as near as I can count, 17 different nationalities in the church, and just the world. Houston's a very cosmopolitan place, so the world is coming there, and so the mission call was pretty clear there. And the first Sunday in Kilgore, Texas, my daughter pokes me in the ribs during the music, and I said, "What?" She said, "Dad, they're all white here." Well, well, that's true. We're in East Texas, you know, and I said, "Well, I know, babe, but God loves them too, you know."
Yeah.
So, and so you know, Kilgore's not all racially homogenous, but the churches pretty much are, and so whether that's good or bad or whatever, I can't ask people to come to my church to assuage what I feel comfortable with. Who has God sent to us, and let's reach out to everyone, and work from there. You know, so again, the church here has given me the leeway to do missions. I've basically been missions pastor as well as senior pastor at all the churches I've served, and they have all given me the leeway to do the work in Honduras, to do these other projects that God has set before us.
That's one of the things I admire about you and appreciate about you is you've always stretched the boundaries, and I want to go back because one of the stories that I want you to touch on is at 9/11. You had this experience here, so the nation was traumatized, attacks, Muslims, Christians, oil and water. You responded in a different way.
It's and boy, can I share so many stories. There are a couple of them there, and initially, one of the things that opened up, and this was just before I got to Houston when 9/11 hit, we had a bunch of pastors, and I was one that was invited into one of the military bases, and we weren't sure why. And this was even before the U.S. had responded to all of this, and they gave us the red carpet treatment and treated, this is what we do, and we met with some of the special forces guys, and this is what they're doing, and they couldn't have been kinder. I laugh. Kind of humorous. They tell all of these middle-aged, mostly out of shape preachers, "Hey, we're going to let you go through the obstacle course that we train on." Well, that sounded good. Well, meantime, the general had told all of those soldiers, "These are my guests, don't let them get hurt." Well, they didn't let us do anything, you know, because they were going to protect us. But finally we asked the general, so why are we here? He said, because we need your prayers.
Wow.
He said, we need God's hand in this.
Amen.
And so we did. But following that, when we got to Houston, there's a huge Muslim community in Houston. And in the days after that, and of course a lot of our Baptists were saying, well, who are Muslims? What do they believe? And so we decided it would be I think this is a story you're from. We decided, it'd be good. Let's do someone was doing a simulcast on this is what Islam is. This is how you witness to a Muslim. So let's do that simulcast. So we promoted that, prepared for that. I announced it on Sunday morning, and Monday morning the local imam called me and said, "I don't think I like what you're doing."
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's go to lunch. And so I took him to lunch, and we had a great conversation. And I told him, I said, look, not all of my people know what you believe, so I said, but you're invited to come to this event. Mm-hmm. And I did not think he would show up. And so Sunday night in Houston, we have this conference simulcast on how to win a Muslim to Christ. And there's about 150 Baptists show up and about 150 Muslims show up at this event. And we all sit down and the simulcast start, and this converted Muslim is telling the Baptist, this is how you win Muslims to Christ. Mm-hmm. And you could cut the tension in the room with a knife.
I bet.
About halfway through the simulcast, of course the sun went down. And so the observant Muslims, a lot of the men got up and walked out. And that scared my people. Well, they were going out to pray, and then they came back in. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 hours of this event. It ends. I never thought I'd ask an imam to speak in a Baptist church. It wasn't planned, but the simulcast ends, and there's so much tension in the room. And so I look at the imam and I said, look, just a couple of minutes. Did we misrepresent your faith in any way? And he corrected a couple of things, and it was good. And then the imam and I are standing there at these 300 people, all staring at each other, and what next? Yeah. And I simply asked the question, have you guys ever talked to each other? And of course the answer was no. In fact, a little Muslim lady said, I go through the grocery store here all the time. No one speaks to me. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you could listen to me or the imam, but how about you guys just talk to each other and ask each other questions? And so for another hour, they stayed there talking to each other. And that opened the door. I kind of became, I jokingly say, the evangelical pastor from Central Casting for the Muslim community, kept hosting these interfaith events. Yeah. And if you've been to these interfaith events, no one says anything of significance, and it's it's kind of a waste of time. But I had a couple of missionary friends that said, no, you need to go and do that. They said, what's going on stage is not important. We're in the audience speaking to people. Just do it. So we started doing that, and one in particular, there's a Jew and a Muslim and a Buddhist and a this and a that and an Anglican and this and that. And all of these guys are saying, oh, there's so many ways to heaven, and there's all that. And they asked me, and I said, no, the Bible says, and Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And the Jewish rabbi said, well, yeah, but if you wanted to go to Galveston from here, you could take a plane or you could take a boat. I said, yeah, but you can't take I-10. I-10 runs east-west and Galveston south. You're going to have to go this way. And he said, so you're telling all these Muslims that they have to know Christ? I said, that's my faith. That's what the Bible says.
That's what I believe.
This finished up, and several of the Muslim imams present came over to me afterwards and said, thank you. Thank you. They said, we know what you believe. I have no idea what these other guys on stage believe. We know what you believe. And so they appreciate that candor, and you can do that with grace. You don't have to be angry to do that. Yeah. So, of course, Northeast Texas is not a hotbed of Muslim activity. That's not a ministry I'm involved in Kilgore anymore, but in Houston, that was a major ministry.
Sure. Well, they're becoming more and more of a factor in Texas, as there's been a lot of controversy lately.
And I will say, this other organization that I work with, American Exchange Project.
Yeah, get to that.
When and I can talk about that a little bit, but when these students come, last year when these students were visiting, I got up to preach on Sunday morning, and of course we've invited those students who are visiting Kilgore to come to church with us. And I had a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Mormon, a Jew, all sitting there on the front pew. These are ongoing conversations after the fact. Well, why do you believe what you believe? And so even in East Texas, those opportunities are there. Mm-hmm. So if God gives you a message, He'll give you a platform, and if He gives you a platform, He'll give you a message. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit more about share with us, what is the American Exchange Project? How
Sure.
does that work, and what's
This
behind that?
this is a great organization. It's a secular organization, and
Yeah,
this
it's got
came
nothing-
from
yeah.
a lot of these friends who were wanting to know what we evangelicals thought or what folks thought. Were legitimately concerned by the cultural and the political divides in our nation, and hit upon the idea of what if we took students, if you're from the city, we'll send you to the country. If you're from the country, we'll send you to the city. If you're from a blue state, we'll send you to a red state. If you're from a red state, we'll send you to a blue state. And just me. So this is several years old, and it's grown, and we're currently in 35 states and about 70 or 80 cities and communities, and that we're going to grow significantly in the next couple of years.
So what is the time frame if
Sure.
a child
So
commits and they go
students,
to stay with you?
we work through local high schools, and a graduating senior, we will send them on a trip. We pay for everything. They don't pay for a dime.
It's generous.
Say again?
That's generous.
Yes, and we've got some very generous donors who have made that possible. And the idea was we wanted a non-political solution to the political problem in our country. And so we don't take a political position. What happens is we will send, from our high school, we send about 20 seniors, anyone that wants to go, and we're going to send you on a 1-week trip somewhere else in the country, not like here, and they're going to show you their town. And then every summer, about 20 of those students from other places, not like Kilgore, Texas, are going to come here, and we're going to tell you about our town. And that's 2 years ago, I had a little girl from Manhattan, New York, driving in from the airport from Dallas. She had never seen a live cow before. She made us pull off the road to see the cow. The next day, I had her working a squeeze shoot at a local ranch. And so, she, there's things like that. But those students, whatever their political views are, whatever their religious views, they walk away not only knowing and understanding better, they now have friends in those areas. And so we've students that traveled 5 years ago with us are still in contact with the students and so we're hoping we're building a generation that better understands our nation as a whole, not individually. Now, as a pastor, this gives me, again, it's a secular organization, but a big question is always, okay, you pastor this church downtown in this town, what does that mean? And so, I share that, but the focus of the organization is to repair sort of the cultural damage that we have allowed to take root in our nation. So, and it's I highly recommend it. We pay for everything. Boy, if anyone wanted to bring it to their school, please let me know. We'll get it plugged in. And if you're not in the school, it's great for the community. Our mayor loves to meet these students. He makes them honorary citizens of Kilgore.
Yeah, love it.
It is a great, just a civic understanding. My son went to Palo Alto, California, and he came back and, okay, I understand that, the Bay Area of California has nothing in common with East Texas, but he comes back with an understanding of that. They do this just after they graduate their senior year. They're about to be thrown into the real world anyway, so why don't you let them do that when you're there to kind of guide them? What did you see? What did you think? So it's making a huge impact on these young students. So
Powerful.
they have better conversation than we as adults do. They talk through their differences in ways where we get angry and they just ask questions, and they handle those conversations better than we do. So.
Well, kind of wrapping up here, Glenn, maybe just talk just a little bit about, you talk about when God gives you a seat at the table, take the seat. Maybe just
sure.
Flesh that out a bit.
I think that's so American Exchange Project is a perfect example. Okay, I chose to be a part of that organization. They asked me to be a part. They did not ask me to come and evangelize America. Now, I'm with other organizations where I do try and do that.
Sure.
But my role with that group, I'm on their board, and so it's for that organization. With that, students and adults are curious. Okay, well, what do you Christians believe? Why do you think the way you do? But that's very different than me coming in with a big Bible and thumping them on the head and saying, hey, there's a place for that. And in my mission work, in my church work, and those are, but this organization has asked me to introduce these students to this part of the world. My faith ought to work into that, but so when you sit at the table, understand what's been said at the table for you, and how would God respond. I mean, Jesus was a master of this in Scripture, right? When he's with the Pharisees, or when he's sitting when he's at Zacchaeus' table, or all of these things, he is God, but be in the presence of God, literally, in a way that's conducive to the setting you're placed in. So my pulpit on a Sunday morning is different than these other groups, but I still can share my faith and represent Christ at the table as it is set for me, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I believe wherever you're at, I think it's Acts 10:38. Jesus, or Luke is writing that Jesus went about doing good. He went about his daily life, and everywhere he went, he manifested the presence, the glory of God with him. And I tried,
Well, you talked about earlier. I mean, you and I met this waitress at a restaurant where we went to eat,
yes.
and I'm seldom in there, but you're in there, and God's opened that door for you to just be His presence for you. You've seen her and seen that progress, and that happens. It would happen all the time if we just let God.
Yeah.
If we were attuned to what He was leading us to in those moments.
Yeah. Is that we had a waitress waiting on us at a local restaurant, and again, as Glen has stepped out times, as he shared, I felt like, I was wanting to minister to this lady, and I did so, and she got emotional with us and shared some things to two complete strangers. Mm-hmm. She's sharing her heart and some deep hurts that were going on in her life, and I'll go to that restaurant, maybe a couple of times a month, and if she sees me, she knows it was something that no one else would do. And I told her, I feel like the Lord wants me to do this for you. The Lord wants me to tell you this. And so that stuck with her, and so she'll update me. She'll say, well, okay, this has happened. We're moving in the right direction. All this bad stuff that was going on, and so it's been a blessing to see it unfold. And again, it's just, as Glen's life is just such a beautiful example of just stepping out of the boat, so to speak, and getting involved in the community and making a difference in people's lives instead of beating them over the head with a Bible. And now is the moment of truth here, and we've got a picture of all this filthy, dirty water. I know it's not recording on the cameras, but it will be in the video, and he drinks this water all the time, so we're going to watch Pastor Dr. Glen Young drink this really, this is like dirty, nasty, filthy water here, folks.
Sure, so I'll...
And he is going
to... And I drink in Honduras, I drink the water coming out of this filter, and I've never gotten sick. It's just...
Never gotten sick.
We do occasionally at the church, when we're raising funds for this, we'll put a bucket of dirty water in the in the foyer, and it's usually the young kids that are willing to drink the water, but we give them a
Yes.
cup of water if they want it. But
Yeah.
it's perfectly pure, perfectly clean.
Yeah.
That water is better than what comes out of my tap.
Yeah. I believe it. Yeah. Yeah.
And when you see the picture, it is dark and dirty, and literally we just took dirt out of the flower bed in your backyard and poured in there. But it works in Central America at the biological level. I mean, it's 0.1 micron. That's pure water. That's cleaner water than we are getting out of our systems here.
Yeah.
Once it goes through that.
Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this message and share it with your friends at church and your family and your loved ones. And I really want to say, too, thank you so much for tuning in. I mean, it has just blown me away to see just the short amount of time we've done this. We've got over 1 million views. We passed over 1 million views a few months back, and it's just been very encouraging. It is a little bit of work, but you know, we do this to try to impart life, to get the gospel out to all parts of the world. And another thing that's been really encouraging is just to see the breakdown, the demographics, that probably half of the viewers of this program are in Europe, they're in Russia, they're in all different parts of the world. And I'm thinking, well, I'm sitting here with an East Texas pastor in East Texas, and only God knows who it's going to reach. So thank you for those who are faithful to watch consistently, and we love it when strangers tune in and say, you know, what are these two guys from Texas talking about today? So God bless. Look forward to some more ministry in the future with you. Like and subscribe. It helps us get the word out. God bless.